Hello everybody and welcome back to the CPD Group podcast. We are very happy to welcome two special guests to the sofa today and friends, of course. We've got Jane and we have Joyce CoomberSewell, who are the owners and the founders of CoomberSewell Training. So welcome. Thank you very much for coming to join us. It's great to see you here. So tell us a little bit about your friends that you brought with us.
Okay, so we have Greg, Buzzy and Moo. And Greg is mine. He's a week younger than me. And he was my well done for surviving the incubator present from my godparents. Buzzy lives in our motorhome. Have motorhome will train. And explain.
Moo, I bought in America last year. And I just love her because she sits on my arm. She's really cute.
Fab. Well, I'm glad you managed to bring them with you to show the audience. So tell us a little bit about yourselves then, if you don't mind, and a little bit about CoomberSewell Training. So how did it begin? Who is it aimed at? And what makes your business unique?
We started off, 12, 13 years ago, actually with our first company, an LLP, and we're Associates of Student Finance England. So Jane teaches study skills and I'm a mentor, which is just a posh word for granny. And we do enjoy it, but it got a bit samey. So we launched CoomberSewell Training CIC last year, and we offer training courses. So they could be to parents of neurodiverse children, or carers, but also to companies, because people just don't seem to understand. Like somebody says there's normal society, which I'm not sure that even exists. And then there's the neurodiverse, which I tend to refer to as human diverse. And we're currently actually expanding. So it used to just be about autism because that's me, I'm autistic, that's my T-shirt. But we want to also expand it to those who are selective mutes, Down syndrome, people in wheelchairs, just anybody that's different from whoever normal society is.
So I come from a civil service background, working with employers. And increasingly what Joyce and I have noticed is when you say to employers, line managers, HR, when you suggest them they might want to take on a neurodiverse member of staff, whether that be something diagnosed or something much more abstract like my neurodiversity, which doesn't have a diagnosis, doesn't have a name, all they see is the challenges. There's huge opportunities. So the training courses we run, so as Joyce said, she specialises in neurodiversity. I'm an academic, so I specialise in training that supports people in the world of academia. We want employers, families, girlfriends, boyfriends to see the opportunities and the joys of, and also for neurodiverse people themselves. So many of our students believe they're broken. So that's kind of at the heart of it. That's why we started.
Yeah. So tell us a bit about the ultimate kind of goal of the company then, so what are you trying to achieve from your work? What's your main ethos?
For me, it's levelling up society. That at the moment, we need these labels to educate people about autism or Down syndrome or whatever. But I want us to get to that point where we don't need those labels anymore because we all accept each other. We're all different. So Jane is neurodiverse, but she wouldn't be recognised as that. The reason she's neurodiverse is because her IQ is higher than 99% of the rest of the world and is officially known as a genius, which makes her more diverse than me as an autistic, because there's loads of autistic people around, but there's not many people with Jane's high IQ. So it's just, we've got to stop concentrating on the differences and just love and serve and be kind to one another.
And I think for me, with the more academic side of it, again, I see an academia which is more interested in giving people a label than giving them access to true access to whatever academic pursuits they have. So I think, again, it's about getting beyond the labels. And Joyce and I are a drop in a bucket. You know, I think we work with other organisations who have similar goals, but we want to contribute to that place where people are seen on their skills and their character and their integrity, rather than whether they've got a medical diagnosis or they're going to cost some money because you need to buy a different keyboard.
Yeah. I mean, Jane, you mentioned there previously a little bit about your working past, you know, so can you both tell us a little bit more about your career journey to date and, you know, and the kind of the things that you've been doing with your life to get you to this point?
Well, I know you're going to find this very hard to believe, but I'm actually 70 years old. So
Wow.
I left school at 15 with no qualifications whatsoever. But I totally believed I was thick and stupid. And so that was where I went. So my career was based in working up the market stalls, working behind the bar in pubs, all very low level. Nothing wrong with the jobs, but I only took them because I believed I couldn't achieve anything else. When I got to my 40s, I was actually diagnosed with a higher than average IQ, not as high as my wife's, but I'm severely dyslexic. And so don't hold this against me. I was a doctor's receptionist, and I wasn't actually popular with the other receptionists because I could connect to the rough and tumbles that were coming off the local council estate, because I respected them and I gave them not necessarily what they wanted, or it may have been an alternative to what they wanted, but I listened to them. Then as time went on and I met my gorgeous wife, even before I met her, I did actually run a telecoms billing platform quite successfully for 9 years, sold that, and that's when I met Jane. And I'm now, though I am married to this wonderful woman, I was once married to a man. I have 3 daughters, 11 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And out of that 11 grandchildren, 6 are diagnosed as autistic. And that prompted me to get diagnosed because I didn't want them to use that autism diagnosis as an excuse for not succeeding. And getting diagnosed, especially as you get older, is complicated. It took me 2 attempts and 5 years. And in the middle of that, with lots of encouragement from my wife, I went to university, did my bachelor's degree, which followed on from into my master's degree, and I'm now in the final year of my PhD. Each of those are aimed at autism. I am kind of a bit obsessed with autism, but that's kind of my journey, going from a 15-year-old who totally believed that she was so thick and stupid she would never succeed at anything, to a 70-year-old who's at the end of her PhD.
Fantastic. Jane?
And I think in a way mine's more straightforward. I did my degree, English and History, nice university, and started teacher training. Shouldn't have done that. That lasted about a month. And so you take the job that you can get. So I started off on a hospital switchboard, working nights and casual. Through uni, I'd been a lifeguard. I know, can't believe it now. And eventually, my first full-time job was in the civil service, which I did for 10 years. And I think if I had the wisdom stroke, don't give a monkey's, polite version, what people think of me that I have now with the energy that I had then, I had no confidence. So the aim to go into the civil service was to have a job for life, to, keep my head under the parapet, maybe get promoted once or twice. The civil service, give them their due, sponsored me to do my master's, which I did at York. And then went to local authority because as such, that was a promotion. And unfortunately, I ran into a boss who was, as many bosses have been, threatened by my intellect. I probably didn't mask as effectively as I do now, and I was bullied out of a job. 6 months later, 10 other women took a class action out against the same boss. So it wasn't just me, but that's where you're left with. Came down to Kent, which is where we live now, on a short-term contract, and really we kind of fell into forming our first company, didn't we? It was that, or I'd been offered a job as a cremator operator, which my dad's a retired crematorium manager, but Joyce couldn't bear the thought. We were engaged, weren't we, of me working as a charge hand. And she literally said, if you take that job, you're not with me. So about a week later, we formed a company. And as I say, I think if I had the energy I had at 21, 22, I did my first PhD. I just said first PhD, didn't I? I did my first PhD at Joyce's encouragement. We were working in student support, and Joyce could see that I was just probably the only time I'm truly alive is when I'm doing research. And now very much where we're taking the company in terms of my specialisms and growing academic skills and all the stuff they don't teach you that you need to have a degree, like speaking at conferences, networking etiquette, all those kinds of things, is hand in hand with the fact that I'm now doing a second PhD, which does make you a special kind of eccentric.
Fantastic. So you've taken on your respective roles then within the company, you know, Joyce more with the autism side of things, and yourself, Jane, kind of really focused on the academic side of things. So in practice, how do those two roles really kind of complement each other?
Joyce does the marketing, I do the paperwork.
and yes, she won't let me do the accounts for some reason. I think for me, one of my skills is that I can think outside the box. I'm a great problem solver. So as I said, when I worked at the doctor's surgery, a doctor would have a problem, he couldn't solve it, give it to the secretaries, couldn't solve it, they give it to the manager, she couldn't solve it. It would come to me and I'd solve it within 20 minutes. Now I come up with the thinking outside the box, and then Jane checks it's legal.
Fantastic. So Joyce, speaking to you on this point, you know, so you heading up the kind of autism side of the training within the company. I say, so tell us a little bit about what that includes and what do people gain from enrolling on those types of courses?
This idea actually started because I was talking to a taxi driver, an owner of a taxi company up in the north. And he was talking about how the drivers take SEND kids into school in the taxis and what that meant. And so I said to him, so you have special locks on the cars? And he said, no. And I said, okay, so do you have special locks on the seat belts? Well, they have seat belts. I said, yes, but they can undo the seat belts. He said, well, yeah. I said, so you've got a special needs child, maybe stressed and anxious, worried about going into school, undoes their seatbelt so they can get out of the chair. Oh, yeah, but the escort can deal with it. Okay. Is there a screen up to protect the driver so that child can't reach the steering wheel or hit the driver? Well, no. And it was that kind of started the whole thing about the webinars. And because people don't understand what some of the basic things, so masking, stimming. So masking is just everybody trying to fit in. Stimming, so a lot of people think that stimming is about flapping hands. Well, my stim, I can get it out of my pocket. In the left-hand pocket of every item of clothing I wear, I keep cotton wool.
Right.
And it's soft and it's snuggly and I love it. And because it's in the left-hand pocket, nobody sees it. It's very easy I can be doing, public speaking and have a hand in the pocket. Nobody thinks anything about it. And my mum said that she used to find loads of it under my pillow when I was a little girl. And I loved the feeling of it. So I just want people to understand. And it's funny, this stimming, it's a repetitive habit. So if you're not autistic, it would be referred to as a repetitive habit. And I'm going to pick on you. Most men play with their ears, or they do this funny thing with their thumbs. Women tend to flick their hair. That's a repetitive habit. But as soon as you've got the label autistic, we have a special word called stimming. It's the same thing. It's just a repetitive habit. So the webinars are just an educational process. Saying to these taxi drivers, I always talk about the taxi drivers towards the end, put a screen up. Do you know these taxi drivers don't get any training to do with any special needs? Not just autism, nothing. They're just regular men and women doing their job, but they're not trained.
I think Joyce is rather underselling herself, because I think the thing that makes the way we do our training different is the vast majority of people who train in any form of neurodiversity they have intellectual knowledge. I used to be a disability employment advisor. I would like to apologise to every single one of my clients, because at that point, all I had was intellectual knowledge. You'd never believe I'm a word nerd, the way I'm screwing up words today. But for us, and especially as we're looking for new people to come on board and train in other neurodiversities and other areas of, I don't even like the word disability, of living different lifestyles, of having differently wired brains or different needs, we will only accept people who have lived experience. They either are themselves autistic, or whatever the area of training is, or they have lived with it like I have now for 16 years. And I would, as I say, for everybody who knew me before I was married to this one, I apologise. I did not have a clue.
Yeah. I mean, talking about lived experience there, back to yourself, Joyce, if you don't mind. How does that lived experience, I mean, you're quite open about your own autism diagnosis. So how does that lived experience really kind of, influence and help you design the training delivery and the different types of webinars and courses that you deliver?
Up until I started the journey to be diagnosed, I didn't know I was autistic. I didn't know anything. At the age of 4, I thought I was an alien from a different planet. I always knew I was different. I didn't know why I was different. I didn't know why people found me a bit odd and bizarre. And it's like, so there's this chap, and you can find him on LinkedIn, and you won't mind me saying his name. His name's Dan Harris. And he's got a 12-year-old son now called the Joshy Man. And Joshy doesn't speak. So he's got this speaker, I don't know what you call it, like an iPad thing, and it's got pictures and letters, and that's how he communicates. So Dan went, and he's had the alphabet tattooed on his arm so that Joshy can always communicate when he's with Dad, and he's very well known. But it's only because Dad's put it out on the internet that people understand mutism. Our grandson who lives with us is also a selective mute. It doesn't mean they can't talk, but he explains if he's stressed or anxious or poorly, tired, the words won't come out. And the thing is, it's the same with Down syndrome. Do you know there are Down syndrome people who have quite nice, normal IQs, but everybody thinks that a Down syndrome person has got severe learning difficulties, and they haven't. And I just want society to stop thinking that we're broken, we're disabled, we need curing. I mean, I'm sure everybody's heard of autism cured by paracetamol. And it's like, educating people. And so what we've decided to do with the training, we're actually having our website redesigned. We're only going to ask people at the top to do the webinars. So the CEOs or the people, as Jane rightly says, has real life experience. So somebody in a wheelchair, there was this lady and she could not get a job. She'd get through the interviews, and as soon as they saw she had a wheelchair, they went, sorry, we can't get the wheelchair in, we don't have lifts. And the last job she went for an interview, it was job 20. At the end of the interview, the man said to her, yep, we really want to give you the job, but I'm afraid your office would be on the 3rd floor and we don't have a lift. And she was like, oh, yeah, right. And he says, so I'll tell you what we're going to do. This weekend, the third floor office is going to move to the ground floor, and the ground floor office is going to move to the third floor. Please, will you start on Monday? And people think that the difference that they have to make to accommodate other people's needs are huge, and they're often very, very simple.
And I think, going back to your question of how either of us design our courses, everything we do, I think, is about opening up people's minds to the possibilities and the opportunities.
Yeah.
I'll go back to what I said about the students we work with on the other branch of what we do. The number of our students who think they can't achieve. Whereas if you just help people reframe things, we've taken students who were on track for thirds to get firsts. And I think, especially in the way Joyce designs the courses, because she's dyslexic, I'm the one who makes it look pretty on the page. But every part is, and of course, every area has its level of jargon, its area of words, but it's about just opening people's minds up.
And if I can just go back to the whole academic stuff, right? As I said, I'm an authentic autistic doing research on autism. But the academics don't want me to write it in an academic way. They want me to write it like...
The other way around. They don't want you to write it in an autistic way.
Sorry, my mistake. They don't want me to write it in an autistic way. They want me to write it in an academic way. So, for instance, I'm going to ask Jane to do something for me in a minute, because I also have verbal dyspraxia, which means I can't always pronounce words. So the style I'm writing in is something called IPA.
Interpretive Phenomenological Analysis.
Yeah, great. And I don't want to write the academic version of IPA. I want to write what it really means. And it took me 18 months for them to agree that on the first occasion I write IPA, long version, I can put in brackets what it means in English. So I looked at IPA. What does it mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And do you know what it means? All human beings are meaning-making machines. Something happens, you make it mean something about yourself. Thick and stupid over here, because I couldn't read. And you then believe it's true, and you collect the history to make that untruth truth, which is absolutely ridiculous. But I'm constantly being told that I don't write academically enough. And it's a position I'm fighting, because why can't we write in our own styles?
Yeah. So touching upon the research you're doing there in your PhD, I believe the title is "This Is Me and Other Older Women's Experience of Autism."
Yeah.
Okay. So what are some of the key findings and observations that you pulled out of that research that you would like other people, like our audience, to hear?
There's many. The thing with research, the more you research, the more you have to research. So the common thought is that you can mask. So all human beings mask. Women are better than men at it. Autistics are better than non-autistics, but autistic women, we are superior. I have to say that because not giving credit for many things. So we hide our autistic traits. Also, because I'm particularly looking at older women, if we go back 70, 80, 90 years, men were much more dominant than they are today. If a woman got married, had children, she stayed at home, the men earned the money, and the man had the final say. And therefore, women now will say, well, I don't need to be diagnosed, only the men do. Or the other thing that they'll say is, what's the point at my age? I don't need any help, or, I'm not at work anymore. We need to create a historical timeline of autism. So if I look at my old mum, there's 54, 55 descendants. And out of all of them, 66% of us are on the autistic spectrum. Now, if my grandchild takes their child to the doctor and says, I think my child's autistic, and can say, but granny was, or uncle or aunt was, there's a timeline, that child will get taken much more seriously. So there's a lot of reason. There's the whole genetic thing and the way it's in our DNA. But it's normal to be autistic, just like it's normal to have this high IQ, or it's normal to be a woman or a man. It's just normal, you know. I don't know. It's bizarre. Totally bizarre.
In your view, then, looking at the current provisions that are out there, the training courses, the services that are out there, you know, for people with autism, what are the main gaps that you see and you would like people, professionals especially, to kind of fill?
If we just start at the basics, teachers. During teacher training, there's one module that covers all SEN, all, not just autism, all, one module. The Senko will get a little bit more training, maybe the TA. The cleaners, the cook staff, the caretakers, the children in the school get no training whatsoever. We can carry that on to, it doesn't matter what job, if you are having clients in, you don't know if that client is on the spectrum or not. The other thing is, maybe somebody will turn up in a wheelchair. The person will then talk to the person with the person in the wheelchair, not the person in the wheelchair. And it is all about education. Parents, I had a mum and I was talking to her. She had a 7-year-old little boy. And I mentioned the word stimming. She'd never heard of it before. And so I explained it to her. And she said, oh, when my little boy's happy, he does this tippy-toe thing across the room. And if he's cross or upset, he stomps. And that made me realise when people get diagnosed, so 2 of my children are on the spectrum, you get this lovely bit of paper that tells you all the technical ins and outs of the diagnosis. What it doesn't tell you is, why does that child behave in the way they behave? And that is missing. If we go the other end to the older people, it's been discovered as you get older, it's harder and harder to mask. And therefore, very old people who are going into care homes are being diagnosed with dementia and treated for dementia. That they haven't got dementia is that they can no longer mask their autism. So education right across everybody, from the tiny child to the oldest person, we need to educate, and not just about autism. You know, people don't understand Down syndrome. There's a man, he's a very good actor, he's got Down's and he's a very good actor. And people were saying that his parents were forcing him onto the stage to act. And he got really mad. And he said, it's nothing to do with my parents. This is what I'm good at. This is what I like doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so looking at kind of training specifically, the world of education, you know, part of our accredited framework, for example, the A stands for accessible. So how can, you know, training providers make training courses or the webinars even that you kind of put together, how can they be more accessible for people with additional needs?
This comes down to not overcomplicating things. There are all sorts of things that people will tell you need to do to be accessible. Ask your students, ask your participants, do you have a need? What is it? The vast majority of needs are so easily met. Ask people what their communication style is. You know, ask people how they like to both give and receive feedback. You know, people get very, very worried about giving written feedback because then it's written down and it could be used against you. But actually, for many of us who have a different wiring of our brain, we need it written down. We spend so much of our lives in fight or flight, in defensive mode anyway, that we can't hear you when you speak to us in a feedback, anything that involves the tiniest amount of criticality. So if somebody says, write down the feedback. But conversely, if somebody says, you know, just tell me to my face and tell me blunt, don't use metaphors, do it. Yeah, what it comes down to is ask your trainees, what do you need?
I'll give you a really practical example. I'm the member of an organisation called Entrepreneurs Circle. It's a big marketing training company. Now, I love it and I love all the training. What I can't do is be on my own with hundreds and hundreds of other people. It totally freaks me out. Yeah. I can stand on a stage with 3,000-4,000 people and do public speaking, doesn't bother me in the least. But I can't be backstage with five. So Entrepreneur Circle welcome Jane. Jane isn't a member. She contributes a little bit to the food, which is awesome, I must admit. But she comes with me. And we've just come back from a big convention, and I have some dietary needs, so I got all my dinner, but Jane had to go and get hers. So she parks me with one of the staff members that I know very well, so I can stand with him, feel totally safe, protected. I don't have to freak out because there's thousands of people milling around until she comes back. I don't understand why people think it's complicated. It's really, really simple, like Jane said. If you're going to employ someone, ask them, do you have a young girl freaking out because she was in a huge office in the middle? All they did was they couldn't give her an office on her own. It wasn't possible. They didn't have an office. So they moved her to the corner so she could just have a little bit of space. They allowed her to wear noise cancelling headphones. It's not rocket science, and it doesn't cost money.
I think Joyce has just made a good point there. You know, especially if you're doing face-to-face training, your responsibilities in terms of accessibility don't start and end in the classroom. They start and end from the moment that person walks through your door to the moment they leave. And right to the extent of which, you know, it's why Joyce and I own, well, it's one of the reasons why Joyce and I own a motorhome. An awful lot of people much prefer to be trained in their own environment, so we'll go to them.
I imagine that even applies to the communications that you're having with people before they even get to the classroom as well, you know, and communicating with people the way that they find comfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah, super. So Jane, talking to you a little bit. So your training in your side of the business, essentially, is focused on the more academic stuff. You've already mentioned that you've completed one PhD and you're working on another. I mean, whoa. But you're also a member of Mensa as well. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your academic background then.
Okay, so I think this whole business of confidence is something that isn't addressed enough in academia. And perhaps, especially for those of us who are Mensans or who are more diagnosably neurodiverse, we need a lot more interest-based education. So my GCSE results and A-levels were not impressive. In fact, I did resits on my A-levels. And I went to a wonderful university, Liverpool Hope, first time round for my bachelor's. And I met one person. Her name is Helen King. She's now a retired professor, or more correctly, a professor emerita. And she's become my academic confidant. And the more I am in and out, so in effect, what we do with student finance is what they call ALTAC, alternative academic careers. So not pure academia. And the more I see with the way the funding is going, the more I see that academics need to shake up. So the training that I am trying to design, build and deliver is to do with all those skills that academia needs, but do not have the whatever skills, gumption, I'm not sure, imagination to deliver themselves. I mean, have you ever been to an academic conference?
I actually haven't, no, thankfully, by the sound of things.
That was the inspiration of my half of the business. So first PhD, so this is nearly 10 years ago. I was so excited. I went, the very first conference I applied to speak at, that's a process in itself. And there's special skills involved in that. I was accepted for, and it was back at Liverpool Hope. And I was so excited because somebody I had hero worshipped, I'm not going to mention any names to protect the not innocent, was the keynote speaker, and I was so excited. And keynotes are always either first or last in the day. turned up, got comfy, and I'm so excited because, this guy was charismatic as a lecturer. He was amazing. He walked in, he, death of deaths, sat down, put on his glasses and read 16 pages of handwritten notes and then got up and left. I do not understand how people who can be so passionate in their research, so eloquent in the lecture room, go to an academic conference, which in this current age is your best chance to get your next research project funded, find a collaborator, possibly even find your next university that you want to work at, and they turn into planks. My first PhD is about a comedian. And right at that very, very first conference, the feedback I got was, thank God, somebody who's researching comedy who isn't boring, who is funny. And that's and I come from a performance background as well. I've been singing for both performance and pleasure and earning pennies all through uni and school and since I was 7. Which is primarily what I do with Mensa too. I co-organise Mensa Music Weekend. So that's where it comes from. That whole business of academia is, again, now not something that you go into easily and will work in for life. You've got to be able to market yourself. You've got to be able to network. You've got to be able to show your value. And I know so many academics who can't write a funding bid. There's some transferable skills there. I mean, I write the funding bids for the CIC, and I used to do funding bids for the local authority, and I also used to be on grant panel, the people who made the decisions. And I've got a 75% success rate. Now I could easily go and market those skills, and I could become a bid writer. But to me, that's not interesting. To me, actually, the passion is to enable other people to upskill themselves.
Mm. So on that note, I mean, you've designed a tailored study skills program,
yes,
haven't you? Yeah, super. So what are the kind of key challenges that program helps the students you work with overcome?
So the majority of the students we work with at the moment are neurodiverse. So often, but again, I've worked with and in 5 or 6 universities, not just in this country now, and so a lot of the skills that students really need to work on are not skills that are academic skills. It's organising their time. It's how to write a respectful email to their lecturers and their tutors and their seminar leaders that still gets their point across. For postgraduate students, it's so when I did my first PhD, we had a lovely little course called Supervising Your Supervisor, which now most universities run, but they don't actually do it very well. And that's another course. And that can easily be adapted to any work environment. We all have line managers. But if we're not clear to our line managers what support we need, how can they support us? It's all those kinds of aspects that provide the biggest challenges. Once a student's cracked how to use a library, they've normally got it. Another big one at any level is, as an adult learner, actually that moment when the penny drops, that you're not here to be taught, you're here to learn. And that's not the same skill set, those kinds of things.
Oh, fantastic. So many of those students, I understand, that work with you, when you first engage with them, stick with you and come back to you across their academic journey.
Yes.
So what is it about your approach, your delivery, that is so effective that they want to come back and they find working with you so easy? And how could you potentially help other training providers be that effective?
I think when and this is not a lie, when my students, or when our students come back to us and tell us their results, they've often got at least one, whatever the grading process is, higher than they thought they were going to get when they started, often several. And I always say to them, you did all of that. We just love you. We are your biggest cheerleaders. Yes, we've got skills that we can pass on. Yes, Joyce does teach a lot of them how to use a washing machine and how not to get pregnant, how turn up to your lectures not in your pajamas. But yeah, I think an awful lot of people in training are more in love with their subject than they are their students. Mm-hmm. Be in love with your students, whether that be in a parental way or a friendship way. But, the reason why our students come back to us, especially the ones that I'm thinking about, two in particular, who one in particular only studied theology because RE was the only subject she didn't get chucked out of at school. And the only reason she didn't get chucked out of RE was because she only threw a sausage roll at the teacher, not a chair. And she's now an RE teacher, Senkos, or certainly with responsibility for special educational needs. And, we saw her through her bachelor's, we saw her through her PGCE, we saw her through her master's. She started making shall I go back and do a PhD, and are you still around to help me noises? And all we ever did was love her and keep bringing her back down to earth when she got away from herself, wasn't really? Yeah. Just be as interested in your students as you are in your subject.
Fantastic advice. Another great example is that, so one of the things I studied just at bachelor's level was, are counsellors, coaches and mentors adequately trained in the autistic spectrum? Needless to say, I was not surprised when the answer was no.
No.
And what happens there is an autistic person goes along to these people, but the advice or the direction they're leading them into is for non-autistics, which doesn't work for us autistics. And I think what makes our training different is that the training is only going to be delivered by people who actually know. Yeah. So Dan Harris knows what it's like with the Joshi man. I've got another gentleman. He's got quite a severely autistic daughter who has become a recluse. She suffers terribly with sensitivity to fabrics. And he's going to do a webinar on what it's like to be a parent. Nobody ever talks about the parents. It's hard being a parent, especially if your child has got quite complex needs. So we're only inviting people to do these webinars that have lived experience, know what they're talking about. So they might be the CEO of the National Autistic Society. She hasn't replied to me yet, but I'm waiting. But she will know, because the National Autistic Society, though it's generally about autism, they do major in those with much more severe learning difficulties, which isn't my forte. But this lady will know, and even if she doesn't do it and somebody a bit further down the ladder does it, they will know what they're talking about. And so often people give training on a subject they have no real life experience. They've got it out of a book.
Absolutely.
In academia, we talk about epistemology and phenomenology. And for my foundation level students who are first encountering these ideas, I strip it right back and I say, epistemology is head knowledge. Phenomenology is heart knowledge, experience. So, whatever you're training in, love it and live it.
Yeah.
And love and live with the people you're training.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, one of the courses that you actually deliver is a CPD accredited a course about, helping people do public speaking at conferences.
Yes.
So, it sounds like a fantastic course, by the way. But tell us a little bit about the hints and tips that you would give people, not just neurodivergent people, but anybody who is getting up, to make a public speech.
So it's really interesting because this is my baby, but Joyce and I are both experienced public speakers, and we both come at it from incredibly different angles. So rather than provoke a Barney with my missus, I'm gonna keep it simple. So that whole bit about imagine your audience naked.
Yes.
Yeah, don't do that. I think it's about Joyce is a winger. I'm a scripter.
Right.
And there's a place for both of those. But I think what both of us agree on is think about it, whether you write it down or not, think about it. But also it's that whole bit of making every member of your audience feel that you're talking to them. And these are not difficult skills. The zigzag technique is not a complicated one to learn. Making for people who are neurodiverse, being over eye contacted or making over eye contact or not making any at all can be a bit of a thing. There are a million ways to fake eye contact. And that doesn't just apply in public speaking, that applies in interviews. Why does society insist that we make eye contact? But it does. So this is what Joyce and I are saying about masking. We actually, in many respects, we oppose masking, but there are times when it's necessary. So actually, faking eye contact is a really good way of masking. And once you've got the job, then you can explain, well, actually, I really don't do well with eye contact. And these are accommodations that you can ask for in an interview. Disability Discrimination Act and the Equalities Act says we can. But actually, they're really hard for neurotypical people to deliver. So let's get the job first. Joyce probably disagrees with me on this one. And then we can train our employers how to look after us. But yeah, in terms of that public speaking, the biggest two I would say is think about what you're going to say, especially if you had to write an abstract for it first. It's a good idea if what you actually deliver is vaguely near your abstract, and make every member of your audience feel like you're talking to them.
Great advice.
So I would go on to say more practical things. So I agree with Jane it's very easy to fake eye contact. You might think I'm looking at you in your eyes right now, and I'm not. I'm actually looking at your hair or your ears or your chin. But the audience will think you're making eye contact.
Absolutely.
You don't need to bring your script with you. If you're not like me, I just talk off the cuff. But bring little cards with headings so that you remind yourself. You've got to know your subject before you can present your subject. Don't flap your hands around. If you look at TV presenters, they all, especially the weather people, they keep their elbows in.
Can we keep a few secrets, or Noah's going to buy the course?
Sorry.
You've had your training courses accredited with the CPD group. Bit of a selfish question, this one. So how did you find that experience working with us?
This is definitely a Jane question, because when it comes to accreditation, Joyce just goes, I've designed the course, you get it accredited. Fun.
Yeah, excellent.
In the final analysis, we haven't always had great experiences with overseeing organisations of varying kinds. But from the second I had my first Zoom call, which was with Katie, it's been fun. I've very supportive. The portal is so easy to use. The only thing I had to come back on was ironically on my course, and that was the accessibility question, because I think because Joyce and I live in a world of accessibility, it was so flipping obvious I forgot to write it down. And I'm always impatient, but it wasn't a long process either, and I think that's really important.
Would you recommend it to others?
I would recommend it to others because she didn't become a stress head and I didn't have to deal with it. So that's how good it was.
Yes, I think there's two aspects there. There's the high level stuff of if you're delivering training that people can count as CPD, why wouldn't you? It makes it so much more marketable.
Absolutely.
There are only 5 or 6 organisations that you could go to, and why would you not work with one that makes it fun? I mean, we can do easy, we can do hard, we can do a trudge, but why would you not do anything other than fun? Life is serious enough as it is.
Totally agree. That's a glowing endorsement. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But super. So focusing back on you guys then. So from all of the things, the services, the training, all of that you've mentioned here today, how can people actually get involved with you? How can they learn more about what you do?
Excellent question. So we're going to, as I said somewhere at the beginning, we've decided to completely redo the websites. Life has changed. So if you look at our websites now, there's lots of words, a few pictures, but it's nearly all words and a few links. That's all going to change. We're actually videoing ourselves doing introductions, and then there'll be buttons, but very easy to find buttons. So apparently, when I do my interview, I will point. And I'm told that it will be lined up to the button that says webinars. And when they click that button, they will get all the buttons for all the different webinars with the explanation of what those webinars are. So the websites are going to be so much easier. So at the moment, there's a lot of reading, and you can access a few webinars that I've done, but it's going to be much more human
Structured.
diverse. Yes, structured.
Yeah, I think in terms of in the context of people getting hold of us with the websites, give us about a month to get everything rejigged. But we both have both our companies have Facebook pages, and there are only 2 CoomberSewells in the world. If you can spell it, you can find us.
Yeah.
We're on LinkedIn. We're on TikTok. Joyce is on CoomberSewell.training on TikTok, and I am on Jane.CoomberSewell. And if you're interested in the study side of that, I am actually doing a TikTok series at the moment. It's can I do a PhD in 90 minutes a day? But yeah, I mean, we're on WhatsApp. As I say, if you can spell our surname, you can find us. And increasingly, that's probably the easiest way to get hold of us. But yeah, and not just on our existing training. If there's if training people want to partner up on us with, we're here. Absolutely, we're always looking for ways to enable people.
Yeah, happy for people to phone us. We can set up Zoom meetings. In case nobody's noticed, I love to talk. So I welcome people to contact us. And if they just want to meet Moo and Greg and Buzzy, that's on the cards as well.
Fantastic. Well, Jane, Joyce and friends, thank you very much for joining us. It's been really interesting. And thank you very much for joining us as well, everybody. I hope you were as interested to hear the answers from the ladies as I was. Okay, so we'll catch you next time on the next episode of the CPD Group podcast. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.